This is your weekly dose of 3i Atlas featuring the seed of life, methanol and cyanide, brought to you by the Sleepy Science 100 channel. Now let us settle in. Tonight we will drift through the surprising abundance of methanol and cyanide in an interstellar comet's coma. The prebiotic molecules carried from a distant stellar nursery to our solar system. The cosmic chemistry hinting at life's building blocks in frozen ices. Thank you for joining us tonight as we drift far, far out to explore the seed of life, methanol and cyanide. Breathe with me now as we begin to dissolve into the darkness between stars, where chemistry whispers in temperatures so cold that time itself seems suspended. We float toward a visitor, a wanderer, bearing frozen cargo from realms we have never seen. This traveller is 3i Atlas, the third interstellar object humanity has ever observed, drifting inward from the cosmic night, carrying within its icy heart something extraordinary, something that changes how we understand the universe's capacity to nurture complexity, to scatter the ingredients of awakening across the galactic void. Before we begin our deeper journey into the quiet cosmos, if you enjoy exploring the deep science of sleep and space, please consider subscribing. Liking the video helps us know that these cosmic journeys are helpful. If you're listening before you fully drift off, we invite you to comment with one word describing how you hope to feel in the morning, such as rested or calm. Within the glowing cloud surrounding this comet, the coma that blooms as solar warmth begins its patient work, instruments have detected methanol, not in trace whispers, but in remarkable abundance. The James Webb Space Telescope turned its infrared gaze toward 3i Atlas in August of 2025, capturing spectral fingerprints that revealed methanol molecules dancing in ratios we rarely witness, 10 to 20% of the water content, where our own solar system's comets typically harbour only 1 to 5%. This is not a subtle variation. This is a fundamental difference in composition, a window into formation conditions utterly unlike those that birthed the icy bodies orbiting our own star. Methanol, with its simple elegance: 1 carbon, 3 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, 1 more hydrogen bonded delicately to that oxygen. CH3OH forms through processes so gradual they unfold across billions of years. In the interstellar medium, in molecular clouds where density allows atoms to find each other in the vast emptiness, carbon monoxide encounters hydrogen, not in violent collision, but through gentle addition, hydrogenation. 1 hydrogen atom at a time, catalyzed by the surfaces of microscopic dust grains drifting through the void. Cosmic rays streaming through space provide the energy, the push, that allows these reactions to overcome barriers that would otherwise keep the molecules apart. Let yourself sink deeper as we consider the patience of this chemistry. A single methanol molecule forming grain by grain, atom by atom, over timescales that dwarf human civilization, preserved in pristine cold, temperatures below 20 Kelvin, negative 420 degrees Fahrenheit, so cold that molecules barely vibrate, locked into crystalline ices where they wait, and wait until circumstance changes. And circumstance did change for the ices that became 3i Atlas. Born in a molecular cloud orbiting a star we will never see, perhaps ejected from a forming planetary system, perhaps scattered by gravitational dance with a massive planet. This comet embarked on a journey through the galaxy itself, surviving radiation, surviving the slow erosion of interstellar space until it fell, gently, inevitably, into our solar system's gravitational embrace, drawing closer to our sun, feeling warmth for the first time in eons. As 3I Atlas approached perihelion, its closest point to our star, the frozen matrix began to yield. Sublimation, ice transforming directly to vapor without passing through liquid, released the methanol trapped within. The spectroscopy revealed specific wavelengths, absorption lines at 2.67 microns, at 3.5 microns, signatures that cannot be mistaken. Methanol streaming into space, carrying information about its origin, about the conditions that assembled it molecule by molecule in darkness. But methanol does not travel alone. Alongside it flows hydrogen cyanide, HCN, another simple molecule bearing profound implications. One hydrogen, one carbon, one nitrogen bound in a triple bond of extraordinary strength, detected through spectral analysis, through the violet system emissions of CN radicals. Cyanide fragments produced when ultraviolet light breaks the hydrogen away from HCN, creating that subtle greenish glow visible in enhanced images of the coma. The ratio of hydrogen cyanide to water, 0.1 to 0.5%, exceeds the averages found in comets born within our solar system, not dramatically, but consistently, measurably, enough to tell us that wherever 3I Atlas formed, the chemistry favoured pathways that built cyanide with unusual efficiency, perhaps in the outer reaches of its origin system, perhaps in a molecular cloud enriched with nitrogen from previous stellar generations. The hydrogen cyanide forms through reactions between carbon and ammonia, C plus NH3 yielding HCN in the dense hearts of clouds, or through neutral-neutral reactions in gas phases where temperatures hover just above absolute zero. Feel the weight of your body releasing, melting into rest, as we drift through understanding what these molecules represent. Methanol and hydrogen cyanide are not mere chemical curiosities. They are prebiotic precursors, building blocks from which life's molecular machinery can emerge. In environments where methanol and cyanide meet, where water ice provides a matrix, where energy arrives in gentle doses, amino acids can form. Glycine, the simplest amino acid, can arise through pathways called Strecker synthesis. Cyanide combining with formaldehyde, creating intermediates that hydrolyze into the fundamental units of proteins. Imagine, let your mind soften around this thought, that the coma of 3I Atlas, glowing softly as it rounds our sun, contains chemical pathways toward complexity, toward the molecules that, in the right conditions, at the right environment, could begin the slow assembly of replicating systems, of metabolism, of life itself. The VLT Cryospec instrument confirmed hydrogen cyanide in September of 2025, adding independent verification to the JWST observations, cross-checking, ensuring that what appeared in one dataset manifests in another. This is how certainty builds in astronomy, through multiple eyes, multiple instruments, multiple wavelengths revealing the same underlying truth. The methanol lines strong and clear, the cyanide emissions unmistakable. painting a portrait of an object enriched 5 to 10 times beyond what we observe in Jupiter family comets, beyond what the Rosetta spacecraft found at Comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko, Rosetta, hovering beside 67P for months, sampling its coma, measuring methanol at roughly 2% of water abundance, hydrogen cyanide at 0.2%, these became reference values, baselines for comparison. And now 3i Atlas arrives bearing substantially higher concentrations of both. This divergence speaks to formation location, to the specific chemistry available in the disk from which the comet condensed, to metallicity, to the abundance of elements heavier than hydrogen and helium in that distant system. Breathe in, breathe out, feeling the vast scales of space and time that allow such differences to arise. Each stellar system forms with its own initial composition, its own blend of elements inherited from previous generations of stars. Some systems form in regions enriched by nearby supernovae, receiving fresh injections of carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. Others condense from more pristine gas, closer to the primordial hydrogen and helium ratios. These differences cascade through planetary formation, through the chemistry of ices in the outer disk, through the composition of comets injected into interstellar space. The isotopic ratios tell us even more. Deuterated methanol detected in the spectrum, CH3OD instead of CH3OH, where deuterium, heavy hydrogen with an extra neutron, replaces one of the regular hydrogen atoms. The ratio of deuterium to normal hydrogen runs high, elevated above what we find in water formed at higher temperatures. This deuterium enrichment happens only in extremely cold environments, below 20 Kelvin, where quantum effects allow deuterium to preferentially bond into molecules, locking itself into methanol and other organics at ratios that preserve a memory of frigid birth. Every measurement reveals layers, oxygen isotopes in the water, comparing normal oxygen 16 to its heavier isotope, oxygen 18. Track the nucleosynthesis history of the parent star. The fusion reactions that built oxygen from helium in stellar cores, then scattered it through supernovae or stellar winds into the molecular cloud. The oxygen isotope ratios in 3i Atlas differ slightly from solar values, not dramatically, but enough to confirm that yes, this comet truly originated around a different star, with a subtly different chemical heritage. Let your breathing slow, matching the patient rhythm of cosmic processes. The nitrogen isotopes in the CN radicals. Nitrogen 14 to nitrogen 15 ratios near 200, consistent with cold formation in dense molecular clouds, where fractionation processes favour certain isotopic combinations. Each ratio, each measurement, adds a thread to the tapestry of understanding, weaving together a story of birth, travel, and revelation. The coma itself is a dynamic environment, not a static cloud, but a flowing, evolving system, molecules sublime from the nuclear surface, the irregular iceberg measuring perhaps a kilometre or two across, and stream outward, driven by the pressure of evaporation, by the faint push of solar radiation. The production rate for methanol reaches 10 to the 27th molecules per second, a number almost incomprehensible in its magnitude. 10 followed by 27 zeros, molecules per second, streaming into space, creating a cloud that extends hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Within this cloud, chemistry continues. The ultraviolet radiation from the sun doesn't merely warm the comet, it drives photochemistry, breaking bonds, creating radicals, initiating cascades of reactions. Methanol photolysis produces formaldehyde, H2CO, which itself breaks down further into carbon monoxide and hydrogen, each step revealing the nested complexity, the layers of molecules that build and break in the coma's energetic environment. Hydrogen cyanide photodissociates into CN radicals, which emit that characteristic violet light, creating the greenish hue that observers note when they process images. With the right filters, the column density of CN, measured at 10 to the 12th to 10 to the 13th molecules per square centimetre, provides another way to quantify the abundance, to understand how much cyanide flows through each cross-section of the coma. These numbers connect to models, to computational simulations that attempt to reproduce the observed chemistry, requiring parent molecule abundances, requiring assumptions about how efficiently sublimation occurs, about how active regions on the nucleus contribute differently than quieter zones. Rotation modulates the outgassing. As the nucleus spins, different faces turn toward the sun. Some regions may be richer in volatile ices, releasing more methanol and cyanide as they warm. Others may be covered in refractory lag deposits, darkened crusts of material too heavy to sublime, creating variations in molecular release that pulse with the rotation period. Observations must account for this, averaging over time, or carefully timing measurements to capture the comet at specific orientational phases. Feel yourself drifting deeper now into the realm where facts blend into sensation, where the distinction between knowing and experiencing softens. The methanol and cyanide aren't merely chemicals. They are whispers from stellar nurseries light years away. They are seeds, potential, blueprints encoded in molecular structure, waiting for worlds where they might root, where they might contribute to the slow emergence of complexity. Comparison extends beyond 67P to 2I Borisov, the second interstellar comet discovered, which also showed elevated organics, though not quite to the degree of 3I Atlas, and to 1I Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor, which showed no detectable coma, no visible outgassing, leaving its composition mysterious. Perhaps it was already depleted, having sublimed its volatiles during previous close passes to stars in its long history. Or perhaps it was more rocky than icy, a planetary fragment rather than a comet. We may never know. But 3I Atlas gives us what Oumuamua did not: a coma, spectral data, concrete measurements of composition, allowing direct comparison to solar system objects and theoretical models of interstellar ice chemistry. The JWST MIRI spectroscopy resolved ice bands with exquisite precision, showing not only methanol and cyanide but hints of carbon dioxide ice, of water ice, of the complex matrix in which these molecules nest. The CO2 ice features suggest co-location with methanol, mixed intimately in the crystalline structure, subliming together as temperature rises, releasing both molecules into the coma where they can be detected and quantified. This co-location matters. The ice matrix isn't homogeneous, isn't a simple uniform block, but rather a mixture, layers perhaps, or domains of different composition. Water ice often dominates, providing the structural framework, But within and upon it, more volatile ices accumulate. Methanol sublimates at lower temperatures than water, becomes mobile and escapes first as the comet warms. Hydrogen cyanide is even more volatile, fleeing alongside carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, creating a sequence of release that spectroscopy can track by monitoring which molecules appear at which heliocentric distances. Sequential release reveals the onion-like structure of cometary ices. First the hypervolatiles escape, then the moderately volatile organics like methanol. Finally, water begins to dominate as the nucleus reaches temperatures where water ice sublimes efficiently. By the time Thrueus Atlas reached perihelion, all these processes were active. The full chemical complexity on display for our instruments, for our understanding. Let the knowledge wash over you like gentle waves. No need to grasp. Simply allow the information to flow through awareness. The gas phase reactions in the coma create even larger species, building upward in complexity. Glycine precursors can form through Strecker synthesis pathways, cyanide plus formaldehyde yielding glycinonitrile, which in aqueous environments, in water-rich conditions, hydrolyzes to glycine, that first amino acid, that doorway to proteins and life as we understand it. The implications for early Earth shimmer at the edges of this understanding. 4 billion years ago, when our planet was young, when its surface was still cooling from formation, when oceans were new and the atmosphere very different, comets and asteroids rained down, delivering water, yes, but also organics, prebiotic molecules synthesized in stellar nurseries and preserved through billions of years of cold storage. Interstellar visitors like 3I Atlas, along with countless comets born in our own system, seeded the primordial oceans with methanol, with cyanide, with formaldehyde and ammonia, and all the reactive carbon, nitrogen, oxygen compounds that chemistry could assemble in the right conditions. This idea, sometimes called panspermia in its broadest form, or exogenous delivery in more conservative language, proposes that life's raw materials, perhaps even life's precursor molecules, arrived from space, that the chemistry necessary for life didn't have to start from atmospheric gases and lightning alone, but could benefit from a library, a reservoir of molecules pre-synthesized in space and delivered intact through cometary impacts and the steady rain of interplanetary dust. The Murchison meteorite, a carbonaceous chondrite that fell in Australia in 1969, contains amino acids, dozens of them, including glycine and alanine, the same amino acids that could form from methanol cyanide chemistry, the same building blocks, suggesting that the pathways active in 3I Atlas's coma, or in the ices from which it formed, parallel the chemistry preserved in primitive meteorites, in the most ancient samples of solar system material we can hold in our hands. Your body grows heavier, more relaxed, as we contemplate this convergence. The comet from another star, the meteorite from our own system's formation, the laboratory experiments that reproduce these reactions under simulated space conditions, all pointing toward the same conclusion, that complex organic chemistry is ubiquitous, that wherever conditions allow, carbon and nitrogen and oxygen will find each other, will build methanol and cyanide and formaldehyde, will create the feedstocks from which greater complexity emerges. the high organic content in 3I Atlas challenges some formation models. Efficient hydrogenation in cold molecular clouds requires specific conditions. Dust grain surfaces must be accessible, must have the right properties to catalyze reactions without trapping reactants. Hydrogen molecules must have sufficient mobility on ice surfaces to find carbon monoxide, to add one by one, building toward methanol through intermediate steps like formaldehyde. Quantum tunneling aids this process, allows hydrogen atoms to effectively pass through barriers they classically couldn't surmount, enabling reactions at temperatures where thermal energy alone would be insufficient. Cyanide synthesis through neutral-neutral reactions in gas phases or through photodissociation regions where ultraviolet light drives chemistry, depends on nitrogen availability, on the presence of ammonia or molecular nitrogen that can provide the nitrogen atom. The specific pathways remain subjects of ongoing research, of laboratory studies attempting to reproduce interstellar conditions, of computational quantum chemistry, calculating reaction barriers and rates. Each piece of data from 3I Atlas refines these models, tests predictions, occasionally surprises us with abundances higher or lower than expected. Breathe into the mystery of it. The universe is a vast laboratory, experiments running for billions of years across trillions of molecular clouds, each one slightly different in temperature, in density, in composition, producing ices with varying ratios of organics, occasionally ejecting comets into interstellar space where they wander, sometimes captured by other stellar systems, delivering chemistry across light years, across parsecs, potentially across the entire galaxy. The photolysis of methanol in the coma, breaking bonds under ultraviolet assault, doesn't destroy it faster than sublimation releases it. A steady state emerges, production from the nucleus balanced by destruction in the coma, allowing the observed abundances to remain relatively constant over the weeks and months of observation. Models must account for this balance, must include not only sublimation rates, but also photochemical destruction rates, lifetimes of molecules in the solar radiation field, daughter products created by photolysis that themselves may be observable, the carbon isotope ratios, comparing carbon-12 to carbon-13 in methanol and carbon monoxide, show values near solar, with slight enrichments that hint at fractionation during formation. The 12 carbon to 13 carbon ratio measures approximately 90 in terrestrial samples, but varies in different astronomical environments, reflecting the nuclear reactions in stars that produce carbon, the mixing processes in molecular clouds, the fractionation that can occur in cold chemistry. 3I Atlas falls within expected ranges, confirming its origin in a star system with similar metallicity to our own, not dramatically enriched or depleted in heavy elements, suggesting perhaps a similar evolutionary history for its parent star. Nitrogen isotopes provide another layer of insight. The nitrogen 14 to nitrogen 15 ratio near 200 fits expectations for cold molecular cloud chemistry. Fractionation processes in the interstellar medium preferentially incorporate nitrogen 15 into certain molecules under specific conditions, creating isotopic signatures that serve as thermometers. As traces of formation temperature and environment, The CN radicals observed in 3I Atlas preserve this information, allowing us to reconstruct conditions in a molecular cloud that existed light years away, perhaps before our solar system even formed. Feel your mind beginning to float, unmoored from specifics, drifting into the larger patterns, the oxygen isotopes, tracking stellar nucleosynthesis, showing where oxygen originated, in what generations of stars, through what fusion cycles. The slight difference from solar values confirming that yes, this comet truly came from elsewhere, from a system with a subtly different heritage, a different mix of elements, close enough to produce methanol and cyanide through similar pathways, different enough that careful measurement reveals the distinction. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAOs, rings of carbon atoms with hydrogen attached, may lurk in the spectral data. The infrared spectra suggest features consistent with aromatic structures. Though definitive identification remains challenging, the hints are tantalizing. PAOs form in carbon-rich environments, in the outflows of dying stars, in the atmospheres of cool red giants, and survive in the interstellar medium despite radiation and chemical processing. If present in 3I Atlas, they would represent yet another layer of complexity, another class of organic molecules delivered from afar. Methanol serves as feedstock for even larger molecules. In ice mantles, under the influence of ultraviolet radiation or cosmic rays, methanol can link together, building chains, creating molecules like ethylene glycol or methyl formate. The chemistry tree branches, each molecule a node from which multiple products can grow, and these reactions don't stop. They continue as long as energy arrives, as long as reactants remain in contact, building molecular complexity gradually, patiently, over the eons that an icy body spends in the cold outer reaches of a stellar system or in the interstellar void. Ribose, the 5-carbon sugar that forms the backbone of RNA, has formation pathways that begin with simple molecules like formaldehyde. Formaldehyde polymerization under the right conditions yields sugars through the formose reaction. Methanol can participate in related chemistry, providing carbon and hydrogen atoms that build toward the sugars life requires. The exact pathways remain subjects of active research, but the principle stands that the molecules in 3I Atlas, the methanol and cyanide and formaldehyde released from its ices, represent starting points for synthesizing the components of nucleic acids. Cyanide itself polymerizes under certain conditions. Hydrogen cyanide molecules link into chains, into structures that include the purine bases, adenine precursors forming through HCN tetramerization and subsequent reactions. Adenine, one of the 4 bases in DNA, one of the 5 in RNA, arising from cyanide chemistry. This pathway has been demonstrated in laboratory experiments, solutions of hydrogen cyanide left to react yielding adenine among other products. The thought that comets like 3I Atlas could deliver not merely simple organics, but the very precursors to genetic material transforms our understanding of how life might begin. Comets as chemical factories. This metaphor captures something essential. They aren't passive ice balls, but active environments where synthesis occurs, where radiation and heat drive reactions, where molecules mix and recombine. creating libraries of compounds. Some reactions happen in space, in the ice mantles before the comet ever approaches a star. Others occur during warming, during perihelion passages, when sublimation brings molecules together in the gas phase, when photochemistry breaks and rebuilds structures at a faster pace. Let yourself sink further. The delivery efficiency to habitable zones depends on many factors, on the comet's trajectory, on whether it survives perihelion intact or fragments under thermal stress, on whether fragments impact planets or moons, on atmospheric entry dynamics for worlds with atmospheres. Heat during entry destroys many organics, breaks them down into simpler compounds, but some fraction always survives, especially in gentler impacts, in porous bodies that absorb energy gradually, in atmospheric entry at shallow angles that distribute heating over longer times. The vapor phase organics, those already sublimed into gases, may persist through heating better than solid phase organics locked in dust grains. Methanol as a gas, cyanide as a gas, can survive conditions that would char solid organics, can distribute across a planet's surface or atmosphere, seeding widespread regions with prebiotic molecules, rather than concentrating them at impact sites. This distribution mechanism may be crucial, providing not a single concentrated dose but a steady, gentle rain of organics over millions of years. 3A Atlas demonstrated survivability through perihelion. It didn't fragment, didn't show signs of catastrophic thermal decomposition. The methanol continued to sublime without evidence of chemical breakdown. The hydrogen cyanide remained stable to temperatures around 200 Kelvin before subliming cleanly. These thermal stabilities ensure that comets can deliver their cargo intact, that the journey from cold storage in the outer system or interstellar space through the inner system's heat doesn't destroy the precious chemistry they carry. Temperature gradients within the coma preserve this complexity. Near the nucleus, where sublimation is active, temperatures may reach hundreds of Kelvin, but meters away, tens of meters, the gas expands and cools rapidly. Molecules released from the nucleus quickly find themselves in colder regions where they're less susceptible to thermal breakdown, where they can survive long enough to be observed, to potentially contribute to impact chemistry if the comet collides with a planet. Remote ice grains, particles ejected from the nucleus carrying ice mantles, preserve molecules even more effectively. The water ice mantle protects inner organic material, acting as insulation, as armor against radiation and heat. Gradual sublimation of the water releases the trapped organics slowly, gently, maintaining their structure, allowing complex molecules to survive conditions that would otherwise break them down. These grains can travel far from the nucleus, can even escape the comet entirely, becoming part of the zodiacal dust cloud, spreading their molecular cargo across the solar system. Your breathing has become so quiet now, so steady, matching the patient timescales we're contemplating. The astrobiology implications ripple outward. If interstellar comets regularly enter stellar systems, if they deliver organics to forming planets, if this process operates universally across the galaxy, then every planetary system potentially receives chemical gifts from other systems. life's building blocks scattered not just within systems but between them. A galactic exchange of molecular complexity. Exoplanet habitability assessments must now include this factor. It's not merely about a planet being in the habitable zone. Receiving the right amount of starlight to maintain liquid water, but also about delivery mechanisms, about whether that planet receives cometary organics, whether impacts seed its surface with prebiotic compounds, whether the conditions exist for those compounds to assemble into self-replicating systems. 3I Atlas serves as a test case, a proof of concept, showing that extrasolar chemistry can be measured, characterized, compared to our own system's chemistry, revealing similarities and differences that inform our broader understanding. Data from this one comet refines entire networks of astrochemical models, hundreds of reactions, thousands of reaction rates, all adjusted slightly to match the observed methanol and cyanide abundances, to reproduce the isotopic ratios, to predict what future observations might reveal. Laboratory simulations attempt to reproduce these abundances, ice analog experiments where researchers deposit thin films of simple molecules onto cold surfaces, expose them to ultraviolet radiation or particle bombardment, then warm them slowly while monitoring what compounds form. These experiments have successfully created methanol, created hydrogen cyanide, created amino acids, under conditions meant to mimic space environments. Each successful reproduction strengthens confidence that the proposed pathways actually operate in nature, that our models capture essential truths. Quantum calculations support this experimental work, computing reaction barriers, transition states, the potential energy surfaces that molecules navigate as they transform from reactants to products. Modern computational chemistry can predict whether a given reaction is likely under specific conditions, whether quantum tunneling allows it to proceed despite apparent barriers. These calculations guide experimentalists, suggest which reactions to study, which pathways might dominate under different temperature or radiation regimes. Observational confirmation closes the loop. JWST and ground-based telescopes like the VLT providing the measurements, the spectral lines, the abundance ratios that test whether laboratory and computational work accurately represents cosmic chemistry. When observations match predictions, when methanol abundances fall within calculated ranges, confidence builds. When observations surprise us, revealing higher or lower abundances than expected, research intensifies, seeking to understand what factors we missed, what processes we underestimated or overlooked. The third interstellar object teaches us about life's potential ubiquity. Each visitor, Oumuamua and Borisov and now Atlas, expands our sample size, our statistical understanding of what exists beyond our solar system. 3 objects remain a tiny sample, hardly enough to draw firm conclusions about galactic averages, but 3 is infinitely more than 0, is the beginning of comparative interstellar astronomy, and what they reveal, particular Atlas with its seed molecules, its methanol and cyanide from beyond, suggests that the chemistry of life is not rare, not contingent on unique circumstances, but emerges naturally wherever conditions allow, wherever molecular clouds condense, wherever ices accumulate and cosmic rays provide gentle energy over immense timescales. The building blocks of life may be common, scattered throughout the galaxy on countless comets, drifting through the space between stars, occasionally falling into planetary systems where they might, perhaps, contribute to the emergence of something that grows, that replicates, that evolves, seed molecules from beyond, nurturing new worlds. This poetic truth holds scientific weight. The methanol molecules streaming from 3I Atlas, the cyanide radicals glowing green in its coma, carry within their bonds the potential for amino acids, for nucleotides, for the foundations of biological complexity. They are quiet, patient, waiting for the right conditions, for water and warmth and mixing, for environments where chemistry can explore the space of possible reactions and stumble, eventually, into patterns that sustain themselves, that grow more complex with time. Feel the boundaries of your body dissolving slightly, as if you too are part of this cosmic flow. These molecules don't think, don't intend, don't strive, yet they participate in something profound. They are the universe's way of experimenting, of trying combinations, of building complexity from simplicity through the operation of physical law and vast time, and we, observing them, measuring them, understanding them, are the universe examining itself. Consciousness arising to contemplate the chemical foundations from which consciousness itself emerged. The circle completes. Stardust to stars, to molecules, to minds capable of pondering stardust. Breathe with this. Let the thought carry you deeper into restful darkness. The HCN rivers flowing through icy veins. This metaphor speaks to the network nature of cometary chemistry. Hydrogen cyanide doesn't exist in isolation, but threads through the ice matrix, through channels and cracks, through domains of different composition, creating pathways, rivers in frozen landscapes that release their contents when warmth arrives, when the sun's energy penetrates the surface and transforms solid to vapor in one continuous phase transition. These rivers carry more than cyanide. They carry history. They carry the record of formation conditions light years away. They carry isotopic signatures that speak of temperature and pressure and radiation exposure over billions of years. Each molecule a messenger, each spectral line a sentence in a story written in the language of quantum mechanics and thermodynamics. The seed vault from another star's garden. This image captures something beautiful about 3I Atlas. It is literally a vault, a cold storage facility traveling through space, preserving molecular patterns from its birth environment, protecting them from degradation through the cold and vacuum that would destroy exposed organics, until arrival, until capture by our sun's gravity, until the vault opens through sublimation and releases its contents for our instruments to sample, to analyze, to learn from. What grew in that distant garden? What stellar processes created the elements? What supernovae enriched the molecular cloud with heavy atoms? What density and temperature characterized the region where ices first condensed onto dust grains? We can infer some of this from what we observe, from the abundances and isotopes, but much remains uncertain, hidden behind the limitations of distance and time. We cannot travel to that system, cannot observe it directly, can only study what it sent us, this one wandering sample, this gift of cosmic circumstance. Let your mind drift through stellar gardens. Imagine molecular clouds collapsing, stars igniting, planets forming from the disk, comets accumulating in the outer reaches. One comet among billions, somehow perturbed, ejected, sent on a trajectory that would bring it, eons later, into our neighborhood, into our detection range, into our scientific awareness, the organic symphony in sublimating silence. There is something paradoxical here, something worth contemplating as you sink towards sleep. The sublimation is violent in molecular terms, bonds breaking, molecules escaping the ice lattice, streaming into vacuum. Yet from our distant perspective, it appears utterly quiet, gentle, silent. The coma grows smoothly, expands gradually, the violence of molecular dynamics invisible, the tumult of photochemistry inaudible. We see only the peaceful glow, the serene expansion of the cloud, the graceful brightening and fading as the comet follows its orbital path. This silence holds an entire symphony of chemical transformation, thousands of species, products and reactants, intermediates and fragments, all interacting, all transforming, creating a web of reactions so complex that models require hundreds of equations to capture even the major pathways. Yet we compress this into a few abundance ratios, a handful of spectral lines, a simplified picture that our minds can hold, can work with, can use to draw conclusions about the invisible complexity. Cyanide's sharp note in life's chorus, the CN radical emitting that violet light, that greenish glow, provides one voice among many in the spectroscopic chorus. Each molecule has its signature, its characteristic wavelength determined by the quantized energy levels of its electronic and vibrational and rotational states. Together they create a spectrum, a forest of lines, each one telling us something specific about what molecules exist and in what quantities and at what temperatures and velocities. The sharpness of cyanide's note, its distinctive emission, makes it particularly easy to detect and measure. This is why CN became one of the first molecular species identified in cometry, COME, long before modern instruments could detect more subtle spectral features. The violet system emissions appear strongly in optical spectra, visible to ground-based telescopes, allowing astronomers to track cyanide production over entire apparitions, mapping how it varies with heliocentric distance, with rotational phase, with the comet's activity level. Your breathing slows further, matching the gradual pace of cometary evolution. These objects change on timescales of days and weeks as they approach and recede from the sun, fast by astronomical standards, yet still requiring patience. Observations spread over weeks, monitoring how the coma evolves, how production rates change, how the composition shifts as different ice layers sublime away. Frozen archives of stellar chemistry. Each comet preserves a moment, a snapshot of conditions in its birth environment. The ices record temperature through deuterium fractionation, record radiation exposure through chemical processing signatures, record elemental abundances through overall composition, like tree rings recording climate history, or ice cores preserving ancient atmosphere. Cometary ices archive information about their formation era and location. But unlike tree rings or ice cores, which we can study in detail in the laboratory, cometary ices remain distant, accessible only through remote sensing, through spectroscopy, through inference from what sublimates and how. We cannot bring 3I Atlas into a clean room, cannot section it and examine its structure microscopically, cannot perform controlled experiments on its material. We work with what nature provides, with the molecules released into the coma, with the information encoded in photons that travelled millions of kilometers to reach our detectors. This limitation makes each detection precious, each spectral feature significant. Each observation of 3I Atlas, whether from JWST or VLT or smaller instruments, adds to the archive of knowledge, expands our understanding, constrains models more tightly. The data will be analysed for years, reanalyzed as techniques improve, compared to future interstellar visitors as they arrive and are characterized. Life's building blocks in COMET'S breath, such a gentle way to describe sublimation. The breath of the comet, its exhalation as solar heat penetrates, releasing vapor that streams away, carrying methanol and cyanide and water and carbon dioxide and all the other molecules trapped in the ice matrix. This breath becomes the coma, becomes observable, becomes the means by which we learn what comets contain. And what they contain, these building blocks, these ingredients for life, exist not just in 3I Atlas, but presumably in countless other comets drifting through the galaxy. Each stellar system likely produces millions or billions of comets during planet formation. A fraction of those get ejected into interstellar space through gravitational interactions. They become wanderers, joining a population that may number in the septillions, 10 to the 24th power or more throughout the Milky Way. If even a tiny percentage of these carry enriched organics like 3I Atlas, if even a fraction of a percent have methanol and cyanide abundances elevated above typical values, then the delivery of prebiotic compounds to planets throughout the galaxy proceeds continuously, naturally, inevitably. Whenever a stellar system captures a passing interstellar comet, whenever a newly forming system's own comets impact its inner planets, organic chemistry arrives, seeds are planted, potential accumulates. Feel the vastness of this, the sheer number of possible sites, possible worlds where these seeds might find purchase, might encounter the right conditions to germinate in a chemical sense, to begin the long, complex process that leads from molecules to metabolism, from chemistry to biology. The scale defies imagination, yet here in the darkness, drifting towards sleep, you can touch it emotionally, can feel the profound truth that we are not separate from this cosmic chemistry, but expressions of it, outcomes of billions of years of molecular exploration, the methanol mist nurturing unseen gardens. On Earth, methanol is toxic to humans in anything but small doses, yet in the right context, in prebiotic chemistry, it becomes a nurturer, a provider of carbon atoms in a relatively reactive form. The hydroxyl group, the OH, makes methanol more reactive than simple hydrocarbons, allows it to participate in a wider range of reactions, to serve as a starting point for building larger molecules. In laboratory simulations of prebiotic chemistry, Methanol often appears in the mix of simple organics. Along with formaldehyde and formic acid and other small molecules, it creates a chemical soup from which larger structures emerge. Some experiments have shown amino acid formation from such mixtures. Others have created sugars, or nucleobases, or amphiphilic molecules that self-assemble into membrane-like structures. Each experiment reveals possible pathways, possible routes by which life's molecular machinery could arise from simpler precursors. These unseen gardens, these laboratory flasks or computational models or theoretical frameworks, help us understand what might happen on worlds we cannot visit, on planets orbiting distant stars where comets like 3I Atlas deliver their cargo of organics. We cannot observe prebiotic chemistry happening on an exoplanet, cannot watch amino acids forming in an alien ocean, but we can study the principles, can understand the mechanisms, can estimate the likelihood that given the right ingredients and conditions, complexity will emerge. The HCN harvest from cosmic fields, hydrogen cyanide accumulating in molecular clouds over millions of years, gradually incorporated into icy mantles on dust grains, eventually collected into larger bodies as those grains coagulate into pebbles, boulders, kilometre-scale comets. This harvest requires no conscious farmer, only the operation of gravity and chemistry over vast timescales, the cosmic fields, the molecular clouds where stars form. These are the farms of the universe, the places where simple atoms assemble into molecules, where molecules accumulate into ices, where ices gather into the building blocks of planetary systems. Some fields are more productive than others. Some molecular clouds have higher densities, more efficient star formation, different elemental abundances that favour certain chemical pathways. The harvest from each field varies, just as 3I Atlas differs from solar system comets, reflecting the unique conditions of its formation environment. Breathe into this agricultural metaphor the patience of cosmic farming. Seeds planted by dying stars, scattered as heavy elements through supernovae, collected in new molecular clouds, incorporated into new stellar systems, harvested as planets and comets. The cycle continues, generation after generation. The matter in your body, the carbon and nitrogen and oxygen, participated in this cycle, was once in ancient stars, was dispersed, was incorporated into the molecular cloud that became our solar system, eventually found its way into the planet, into organisms, into you. Prebiotic dawn in volatile release. Dawn implies awakening, light after darkness, and there is something dawn-like about sublimation. The comet approaches the sun. The frozen night of interstellar space gives way to warmth. Ices begin to stir, to sublimate, to release their contents. It is an awakening, a transition from dormancy to activity, from preservation to expression. The molecules locked in ice for billions of years suddenly become mobile, active, able to react and combine and flow. This volatile release, this escape of gases from the nucleus, creates the opportunity for chemistry to proceed. In frozen form, molecules remain isolated, unable to interact, but as gases, streaming through the coma, they encounter each other, collide, sometimes react. The photochemistry driven by solar ultraviolet adds energy, drives reactions uphill that wouldn't proceed spontaneously. creates radicals and ions that are far more reactive than stable molecules. The coma becomes a chemical reactor, operating under conditions never found on Earth. Vacuum and intense radiation and temperature gradients, creating a unique environment for synthesis. The prebiotic relevance comes when we consider impact delivery. When a comet hits a planet with an atmosphere, the volatile release happens catastrophically, instantaneously. The impact energy vaporizes ice, creates a fireball, but some fraction of the organics survives, rains down over a wide area, dissolves in oceans or lakes, accumulates in the environment where further chemistry can occur. The initial violent dawn of impact gives way to the slower dawn of chemical evolution in the water and rock of the young planet. Seed bearers crossing galactic voids. This is what interstellar comets are. They bear seeds not in a biological sense, but in a chemical one, carrying the molecular templates from which biology might emerge. They cross voids measuring parsecs, light years, distances so vast that even travelling at tens of kilometres per second, typical velocities for these objects, the journey takes millions or billions of years. During that journey, the seeds remain frozen, protected. The cold of interstellar space, just a few degrees above absolute zero, ensures minimal chemical change. Radiation processing can occur, cosmic rays occasionally striking molecules, breaking bonds, creating new compounds, but the rates are slow. The bulk of the material remains as it was when ejected from the original stellar system, pristine, awaiting delivery. When delivery occurs, when chance brings an interstellar comet into a new stellar system, the seeds find new soil, new conditions, new possibilities. Not every delivery results in life. Most planets are not habitable. Most conditions are not right for prebiotic chemistry to advance toward biology. But across billions of stars, across trillions of planets, the seeds are scattered so widely that surely some find fertile ground. Let your consciousness drift with these wanderers. Feel yourself travelling through the dark, the cold, the immense empty spaces between stars. Time becomes meaningless when measured in millions of years. Distance becomes abstract when measured in light years. Yet the journey happens. The physics of gravity and motion ensure that objects ejected from stellar systems will wander, will potentially encounter other systems, will cross the voids we consider impassable. Organic whispers seeding new worlds. There is something intimate about a whisper, something that demands attention, that draws you in. The organic molecules in comets whisper their message quietly. They do not shout, do not demand notice. They simply exist, float through space, occasionally deliver their content to planets where, if anyone is listening, if any chemistry is receptive, the message can be received and amplified. The message is not verbal, not informational in a linguistic sense, but chemical, structural. The arrangement of atoms, the functional groups, the reactive sites. These constitute a message about what is possible, about what molecules can build if given the opportunity. A molecule of methanol whispers about hydroxyl chemistry, about the reactions that carbon-oxygen bonds enable. A molecule of cyanide whispers about nitrogen incorporation, about nitriles and amines and amino acids. Seeding happens on geological timescales, cometry and asteroidal impacts delivering organics over millions of years during a planet's formation and early history. The late heavy bombardment in our solar system, roughly 4 billion years ago, delivered enormous quantities of material to the inner planets. Some estimates suggest Earth's oceans could have been entirely delivered by comets and asteroids. Along with the water came organics, methanol and formaldehyde and amino acids and everything else that accumulates in comets and carbonaceous asteroids. The seeding of Earth, its fertilization with the ingredients for life, happened during this era, setting the stage for what followed. Cyanide catalysts of molecular dawn. Catalysts accelerate reactions without being consumed. And while cyanide molecules do get incorporated into products, the metaphor captures something true, that cyanide chemistry opens pathways, enables transformations that would otherwise be difficult or impossible. The formation of amino acids through Strecker synthesis, the polymerization to form adenine precursors. These reactions leverage cyanide's unique properties, its reactivity, its ability to form strong carbon-nitrogen bonds that stabilize intermediates. The molecular dawn, the first light of prebiotic complexity, occurs when simple molecules begin combining into larger structures, when polymers form, when self-replicating systems emerge. We don't know exactly how this happened on Earth. The origin of life remains one of science's great unsolved problems, but we know that it must have involved a molecular dawn, a transition point where chemistry became complex enough to exhibit properties we associate with life, metabolism, replication, evolution. Cyanide likely played a role in Earth's molecular dawn, just as it probably plays roles in dawns on other worlds where conditions permit. The ubiquity of cyanide in comets, in molecular clouds, in planetary atmospheres, ensures its availability wherever prebiotic chemistry operates. It is a universal catalyst in this sense, a molecule that, wherever it appears alongside water and carbon compounds, can initiate the cascade toward complexity. Your eyelids grow heavier, your muscles more relaxed, as we float through these depths of understanding. Life's quiet chemistry in icy tombs. Tombs suggest death, endings, but in this context they represent preservation, suspension. The ices of comets are tombs that protect, that maintain molecular structure over timescales that would see most materials degraded to simple atoms. They are tombs that can be opened, that release their contents intact when conditions change. The chemistry is quiet in the sense that it proceeds without announcement, without fanfare. Molecules form slowly, accumulate gradually, wait patiently. The processes are mediated by quantum mechanics, by the probabilistic tunneling of hydrogen atoms, by the occasional impact of cosmic rays. There is no sound in space, no noise to mark these transformations, only silent quantum events, state transitions, bond formations, occurring one by one over geological time. Yet this quiet chemistry has consequences that echo through cosmic history. The amino acids in meteorites, the organic compounds detected in comets, these are products of quiet chemistry in icy tombs, and they become raw materials for potentially the loudest phenomenon in the universe: consciousness, intelligence, civilization. The quiet tomb of interstellar ice contains seeds that might give rise to beings capable of sound, of music, of language, of exploring their origins and wondering about their place in the cosmos. Methanol memories of ancient clouds. Each methanol molecule in 3I Atlas formed in a molecular cloud that existed long ago, perhaps before our solar system formed. The molecule carries a memory of that cloud encoded in its isotopic composition, in its deuterium enrichment, in the quantum state it occupied when it froze into ice. This memory is accessible to us through spectroscopy, through careful measurement and analysis, allowing us to reconstruct aspects of the environment that birthed the molecule billions of years ago. Memories in this sense are physical, structural, not cognitive. The methanol doesn't remember in any conscious sense, but it preserves information, maintains a pattern that reflects its history, just as a fossil preserves the shape of an ancient organism, or ice cores preserve bubbles of ancient atmosphere. The molecular memory is more abstract, more subtle, but no less real. We can read it if we know how to look, if we have the instruments and the understanding to extract information from isotopic ratios and chemical abundances. These ancient clouds, the stellar nurseries where new stars and planets form, are sites of extraordinary chemical creativity. Within them, over millions of years, simple atoms combine into hundreds of molecular species. The densest regions collapse to form stars. The surrounding material forms disks from which planets emerge. The outermost material forms comets and the scattered disk objects. Some fraction gets ejected, becomes the interstellar population, the wanderers. So when we study 3I Atlas, when we measure its methanol and cyanide, we are accessing memories of a cloud we will never see, reconstructing the conditions in a stellar nursery light years away, reading the chemical diary written in molecular structures preserved across space and time. Feel yourself becoming a memory, a pattern in the cosmos, your thoughts slowing, your awareness softening, HCN highways to amino acid shores. The pathways from hydrogen cyanide to amino acids are highways in the sense that they are well-travelled, frequently utilised routes in chemical space. Not the only routes, not even necessarily the fastest, but proven pathways that work under a range of conditions. The shores they lead to, the amino acids, represent boundaries, edges between simple prebiotic chemistry and the beginning of biological chemistry. Amino acids can form through purely abiotic processes. We've synthesized them in the laboratory from simple precursors, found them in meteorites formed before life existed, but they're also biological molecules, the building blocks of proteins, components of the metabolic machinery of all known life. So amino acid shores are transitional zones, places where chemistry might give way to biology, where prebiotic might become biotic. The highway from HCN delivers travellers to this shore. Whether they cross into biology depends on other factors, on whether the right additional conditions exist, whether polymerization occurs, whether catalysis emerges, whether the complex dance of emergence leads to self-replication and metabolism. These highways exist not just in theory but in laboratory experiments, in natural environments, in cometary chemistry. They operate throughout the universe wherever cyanide and other simple organics encounter appropriate conditions. Each operation creates more amino acids, more travelers reaching the shore, more opportunities for the transition to occur, frozen potential drifting to habitability, potential energy stored in chemical bonds, waiting to be released through reaction. The methanol and cyanide in 3i Atlas represent potential. They are stable under current conditions, frozen, dormant, but place them in liquid water, add some energy, provide catalytic surfaces, and the potential becomes kinetic. Reactions proceed, complexity builds. The drift to habitability is literal for an interstellar comet. It drifts through space, eventually entering a stellar system, potentially impacting a planet in the habitable zone, delivering its cargo of frozen potential to an environment where that potential might be realized, where the chemistry might activate and participate in prebiotic processes. But even if impact doesn't occur, even if the comet simply passes through the system and continues into space, it has still drifted closer to habitability than it was in the interstellar void. It has entered a region where planets might exist, where the conditions for life might be met. It has delivered its message to a place where someone might eventually receive it, even if on this passage that someone is only our telescopes and spectrometers. Recording the composition for humanity to study and learn from, seed symphony of interstellar organics. A symphony requires multiple instruments, multiple voices blending into a coherent whole. The organics in 3i Atlas, methanol and cyanide and water and carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and formaldehyde and all the trace species detected or inferred, play together. Each contributes its part. Each adds notes that enrich the overall composition. The symphony is written by physics and chemistry, composed through quantum mechanics and thermodynamics, performed over billions of years in the slow time of cosmic processes. We hear only a fragment, only what sublimates during the brief window of observation. But that fragment suggests the full score, the complete composition that includes all the molecules frozen in the nucleus, all the chemistry that operated during formation, all the transformations that might occur if these organics encounter the right environment. Interstellar implies exchange, connection between stellar systems. The organics are interstellar not just because they traveled between stars, but because they represent chemistry that is universal, not unique to one system, but occurring wherever conditions allow. The symphony plays throughout the galaxy. Each stellar system, each molecular cloud, each comet, contributing its own variation on the universal theme of organic chemistry in cold environments. Let the symphony wash over you, multiple voices, overlapping, blending. You don't need to distinguish each instrument, each molecule. Just feel the overall harmony, the sense that everything connects, that chemistry operates by universal principles to create patterns that repeat with variation across the cosmos. Your body has become weightless, floating in darkness. The scientific details beginning to blur and merge, becoming texture rather than content, feeling rather than fact. This is natural. This is desired. The goal isn't to remember every molecule or every ratio, every measurement. The goal is to drift with the flow, to let the information carry you deeper into restful sleep. The molecular patterns in 3i Atlas, the methanol and cyanide enrichments, the isotopic signatures, These are real, measurable, significant, but they're also beautiful in an abstract way. They represent order emerging from chaos, complexity arising from simplicity, information being preserved across vast distances and timescales. There is something aesthetically satisfying about this, something that resonates emotionally even when the intellectual details fade. Consider how much had to happen for us to observe 3I Atlas. A molecular cloud had to collapse, form a star, create a disk, condense ices into comets. One comet had to be ejected, had to survive millions or billions of years in interstellar space, had to happen to enter our solar system on a trajectory we could observe, had to arrive when our technology was capable of detailed spectroscopy, had to be bright enough and active enough to yield detectable signals. Every step in that chain was improbable individually, yet it happened. And if it happened once, it must happen over and over throughout the galaxy. Interstellar comets must be common, even though we've detected only 3. The chemistry we see in 3I Atlas must be representative of broader populations, broader patterns. The specific is a window into the universal. Breathe slowly, deeply, feeling the weight of cosmic time. The billions of years that methanol molecules spent frozen, waiting, and now released, detected, analysed, understood, becoming part of human knowledge, part of our growing understanding of how chemistry operates on cosmic scales, how life's ingredients spread through the galaxy, how complexity arises in universe governed by simple physical laws. The frozen archives speak through spectroscopy, through the language of wavelengths and intensities, of absorption lines and emission features. We translate this language into abundances, into temperatures, into velocities, into physical and chemical properties. Each spectrum a text waiting to be read. Each observation adding paragraphs to the book of cosmic chemistry we're collectively writing. 3I Atlas will fade from our view eventually. Already it has passed perihelion. Already it's receding, growing dimmer. The production rate's declining as it moves back into the cold outer solar system. Eventually our telescopes will lose track of it. It will return to being an invisible wanderer, continuing its journey through the galaxy, perhaps someday entering another stellar system, delivering its cargo of organics to another world, another possible site for life's emergence. But the data remains, the spectra archived, the measurements recorded, the papers published, the knowledge gained integrated into our understanding. In this sense, 3I Atlas lives on, not as a physical presence, but as information, as a case study, as evidence that enriches our models and informs our predictions about what exists in the universe beyond our immediate observation. Feel yourself becoming part of this flow of information, your consciousness integrating these concepts, making connections, finding patterns, then releasing them as sleep approaches. The boundaries between learning and dreaming begin to soften. Facts transform into impressions. The specific measurements fade while the broader sense of cosmic interconnection remains. Organic whispers, prebiotic dawn, seed bearers, molecular destiny. These phrases become mantras, touchstones, gentle reminders of the themes we've explored. You don't need to hold on to their specific meanings. Just let them echo quietly at the back of your mind. As you drift deeper, The methanol and cyanide are still there, still streaming from the nucleus of 3i Atlas wherever it is now, still carrying their message of prebiotic potential, still participating in the great cosmic experiment of scattering life's building blocks across the galaxy. Their journey continues whether we observe it or not. The chemistry operates by universal laws that require no conscious witness. Yet we have witnessed, we have measured, we have understood, and in understanding we connect ourselves to the process, recognize ourselves as outcomes of billions of years of cosmic chemistry, stardust contemplating stardust. Let go of the need to remember, to retain, to hold on to any particular fact or concept. They will be there if you need them. But for now, in this moment, the goal is release, is surrender, is allowing yourself to drift into deep rest where dreams and cosmic chemistry blend into something new, something uniquely yours, something that emerges from the interaction between your consciousness and these ideas about molecules and comets and the origin of life. The seed vault's serenity, carrying life's blueprint in frozen stillness. This serenity pervades everything. The comet drifts through space without anxiety, without hurry, following orbital mechanics with perfect equanimity. The molecules sublime without concern, release without hesitation. The chemistry proceeds according to quantum probabilities without doubt or fear. There is a lesson in this, an invitation to match that cosmic calm. Your breathing has become so slow, so smooth, each breath a gentle wave, rising and falling, carrying you deeper into rest. The scientific journey we've taken tonight, exploring methanol and cyanide, isotopic ratios and formation pathways, prebiotic chemistry and delivery mechanisms, has been a vehicle for this descent into sleep. The information serving as a focusing point, something for your mind to follow, a path leading down into restful darkness. And the darkness is not empty. It is full of potential, full of frozen possibility, like the interstellar void through which 3i Atlas travelled, appearing empty but actually containing the means for complexity and life. Your resting mind contains creative potential, the ability to integrate and recombine information in new ways, to dream solutions to problems, to make connections invisible to waking consciousness. So as you let go, as you surrender to sleep, trust that the process continues, that integration happens unconsciously, that understanding deepens even when you're not actively thinking. The methanol memories, the cyanide catalysts, the frozen archives of stellar chemistry. These concepts will settle into your mind, find their places, contribute to your overall understanding of how the universe works and your place within it. HCN gentle river, flowing through invisible channels, carrying nitrogen from stars to molecules to life. This gentleness, this flowing quality infuses everything. There is no violence in the chemistry we've discussed, no conflict, only transformation, only the patient work of atoms finding each other and bonding, creating structures more complex than their components, achieving through time and numbers what any single reaction could never accomplish. Flow with this river, let it carry you. You don't need to swim, don't need to direct your course, simply float, trusting the current, knowing it leads somewhere meaningful, even if you can't see the destination from here. The river of cosmic chemistry has flowed for billions of years, carried countless molecules on countless journeys. You are part of this river now. Your atoms once in ancient stars. Your consciousness emerging from molecular complexity. Your rest tonight a return to the flow, a dissolution of boundaries, a recognition of continuity. Life's blueprint hush, the information encoded in molecular structure, in the arrangement of atoms, in the functional groups that determine reactivity. This is life's blueprint, not a blueprint for a specific organism, but for the possibility of life, the general principles, the chemical foundations from which biology can emerge given time and opportunity. And it exists in a hush, in quietness, not advertised or explained, but simply present, waiting to be discovered by those who look carefully, who measure precisely, who think deeply about what molecules mean. You've looked carefully tonight, followed the scientific exploration, thought about implications and connections. Now the time for active thought passes, the hush deepens, the blueprint fades from conscious awareness, becomes part of the substrate, the foundation, the unconscious knowledge that supports conscious thought but doesn't demand attention. Interstellar cradle calm, being held by forces beyond your control, supported by universal laws, orbital mechanics and thermodynamics, gravity and quantum mechanics. These forces operate without fail, without exception, creating reliability, predictability. In this reliability there is calm. The comet follows its path because physics demands it. The chemistry proceeds because energetics allows it. Nothing is random. Nothing is chaotic in the deep sense. Everything follows from what came before. Everything connects in a web of causation stretching back to the beginning. And you, resting now, supported by mattress and gravity and the fundamental forces that hold matter together, you too are held by this web. You too follow natural law. Your neurons firing according to chemistry and electricity. Your breathing regulated by brainstem signals and blood chemistry. Your descent into sleep governed by circadian rhythms and adenosine accumulation. All natural, all lawful, all part of the great pattern. Volatile dawn peace. The awakening of ices subliming, releasing their cargo. This is happening on 3i Atlas right now, slowly, continuously, as whatever portion currently faces the sun warms and releases vapor. The peace comes from inevitability, from the certainty that this process will continue until the ice is exhausted or the comet recedes beyond sublimation temperatures. No resistance, no struggle. Only natural transformation. Your own transformation into sleep holds this quality, inevitable, natural, following from the accumulation of sleep pressure throughout the day, from the darkening of evening, from the decision to rest. No force required, no struggle necessary, simply allowing what naturally happens. Simply releasing wakefulness as the comet releases volatiles. Both processes expressions of thermodynamic truth, of systems seeking lower energy states, of potential becoming kinetic, becoming dissipated heat, chemical seed bloom, the moment when conditions allow germination, when frozen potential activates, when reactions begin building complexity. This bloom happens in spring on Earth, when warmth returns and dormant seeds sprout, but it happens throughout the universe, wherever conditions shift from preservation to activation, wherever ices melt or sublime, wherever organic molecules encounter water and warmth. Perhaps blooming happens on worlds we cannot see, on planets orbiting distant stars where interstellar comets have delivered their seeds, where chemistry experiments with combinations, where over millions of years something emerges that grows, that replicates, that evolves. We cannot know, cannot observe these distant blooms, but the chemistry is universal. The potential exists wherever the ingredients gather. Your mind blooms in dreams, takes the seeds of daily experience and grows them into strange gardens, into scenarios and images and narratives that follow their own logic. This blooming happens beyond conscious control, happens in the darkness of sleep, happens as a natural expression of neural activity during rest. Trust the process, trust the bloom. Know that morning will bring integration, will bring rest restored and energy renewed. Frozen archive drift. All the information preserved in ice, slowly drifting through space, waiting for the right conditions to be read, to be expressed, to contribute to something new. You are an archive too, carrying genetic information inherited from ancestors, carrying memories of experiences, carrying learned knowledge and skills. All of this drift through your life, most of it frozen, inactive, waiting for the right cue to become active, to be remembered, to influence behavior. Sleep is when archives organize, when memories consolidate, when neural connections strengthen or weaken based on use. The drift continues unconsciously, automatically, improving the archive, making it more accessible, more useful. Morning consciousness will benefit from tonight's archive maintenance, from the invisible work happening while you rest. Organic symphony stillness, all the instruments present but silent, potential energy waiting, the stillness before music begins, the stillness between movements. There is power in this silence, in this pregnant pause. Everything exists, everything waits, and in the waiting there is perfection, nothing lacking, nothing needed. Your body and mind approaching the stillness now, active thought fading, external awareness diminishing, the symphony of neural activity shifting from waking patterns to sleep patterns, from high-frequency beta waves to slower alpha, then theta, eventually delta, each transition taking you deeper, each slowing bringing more stillness, more distance from waking concerns, more proximity to pure rest, cyanide chorus integration, many voices becoming one, many molecules participating in unified chemistry. Integration is the key, not separation or isolation but connection. The cyanide doesn't work alone but as part of a system, part of a network of reactions that together accomplish what no single reaction could. Your own integration, physical and mental processes working together, conscious and unconscious collaborating, creates the unified experience of being you. And in sleep, integration deepens, barriers between subsystems soften, allowing communication and coordination that improves function. Methanol memory flow, information moving from one state to another, from experience to short-term to long-term memory, from explicit to implicit knowing. The flow is natural, requires no effort, happens through the basic operation of neural mechanisms during sleep. You simply allow it, provide the conditions, then trust biology to do what it does best, to restore, to consolidate, to prepare you for tomorrow. Prebiotic potential release, everything that was locked away becoming available, becoming active. The potential exists always, even in frozen form. But release allows actualization, allows the potential to become something real, something that affects the world, your own potential, your creativity and problem-solving ability, your capacity for connection and understanding. All of this releases during waking hours but requires sleep to regenerate, to rebuild the reserves, to prepare for the next cycle of release. The universe operates in cycles, comets orbiting, planets rotating, stars forming and dying, matter cycling through different states, and you too cycle, waking and sleeping, activity and rest, expenditure and restoration. These cycles are not weakness but wisdom, the recognition that sustainability requires alternation, that constant output depletes, that input and processing happen during apparent inactivity. Life's ingredient void. The emptiness between stars contains ingredients. The void in your mind as thought ceases contains its own ingredients. The raw material of dreams, the unstructured potential from which sleep will weave restoration. This void is not absence but presence of a different kind. Not empty but full in ways that busy waking consciousness cannot access. Embrace the void. Welcome the dissolution of structured thought, the fading of linear narrative. You have travelled far tonight, from molecular clouds light years away, through formation and ejection, across interstellar space, into our solar system, through observation and analysis, through isotopes and abundances, through prebiotic implications and cosmic delivery. The journey has been long, rich, full, and now it completes in void, in rest, in the letting go that allows integration, seed-bearer harmony, carrying without strain, transporting without effort. The comet doesn't struggle to bear its cargo of organics, doesn't tire from billions of years of travel. It simply is, exists, follows its path. The seeds it carries are not burden but essence, not separate cargo but integral composition. There is harmony in this, in being what you are without conflict, without division between who you are and what you carry. You carry your experiences, your learning, your memories, but they need not be burdens. They are your composition, your essence, integrated aspects of your being. In sleep, the harmony deepens, conscious effort ceases. The natural integration proceeds without interference, without the fragmentation that active thought sometimes imposes. All your parts working together, unconsciously harmonizing, creating the unified you that will wake refreshed. Molecular destiny surrender. Molecules follow their destiny without resistance. Carbon finds oxygen because electromagnetic forces determine it will. Hydrogen bonds to nitrogen because quantum mechanics allows it. There is no choice, no decision, only the unfolding of natural law. And in this determinism there is paradoxically freedom. Freedom from doubt, from second guessing, from the anxiety of infinite possibility. Surrender to your own destiny, not in a fatalistic sense, but in recognition that much of what happens, what you become, follows from forces beyond conscious control. genetics and environment, biochemistry and circumstance, all shaping you, all determining aspects of your path. Surrender doesn't mean passivity, but acceptance, working with what is rather than struggling against the fundamental nature of things. And in this moment, surrender means letting sleep take you, not fighting it, not resisting the natural descent. Cosmic garden integration, all the separated elements coming together, the carbon from one stellar generation, the nitrogen from another, the oxygen from supernova, meeting in molecular clouds, combining in ices, delivered to planets, potentially integrating into living systems. The garden grows through integration, through combination, through the meeting of previously separate things. Your integration continues. Experiences from today meeting memories from before. New learning connecting to established knowledge. Emotions processing through neural networks during REM sleep. Problems working themselves towards solutions through unconscious rumination. The garden of your mind tending itself. No gardener required. Just the natural processes of a brain doing what brains do during rest. Feel the integration happening. Feel the settling, the organizing, the slow establishment of new connections and the pruning of unused ones. All automatic, all effortless, all requiring only that you sleep, that you release conscious control and allow biology its time to work. The frozen life seed, waiting in ice, the methanol and cyanide molecules, suspended, preserved, patient. They don't know they wait, don't experience time, simply exist in a state of potential until conditions change. Your conscious mind approaching this state now, time becoming less distinct, less measurable. Minutes and hours losing meaning as you drift toward a state where now is all that exists, where past and future collapse into timeless present. Methanol, a quiet cradle, rocking gently with the motion of the comet, with the vibrations of sublimation, with the quantum oscillations of molecules never completely still even at absolute zero. The cradle is the ice matrix, holding the methanol, protecting it, preserving its structure across eons. And you have your cradle too, the bed supporting you, the darkness cradling awareness, the approaching sleep holding you gently as you transition from wake to rest. Cyanide molecular thread, weaving through, connecting. The hydrogen and carbon and nitrogen bonded in that linear structure, the triple bond holding carbon and nitrogen with extraordinary strength. This thread doesn't break easily, persists through harsh conditions, survives interstellar radiation and cometary sublimation. Threads of persistence run through your life too, patterns that endure, core aspects of yourself that remain stable even as circumstances change. These threads provide continuity, identity, the sense that you are the same person you were yesterday and will be tomorrow, despite the constant change of individual atoms and molecules. Trust these threads. Trust the continuity. Know that sleep doesn't erase you but refreshes you, that the you who wakes will be recognizably yourself, connected by threads of memory and personality to the you who now drifts toward rest. Prebiotic ice whisper, so quiet, so subtle, the information encoded in molecular structure, the potential waiting to be realized. Whispers don't demand attention, don't insist on being heard. They offer, suggest, invite. And in this gentleness there is respect. allowing the listener to receive or not as they choose. The ice whispers its story to those with instruments to hear, shares its chemical secrets with those who look carefully, but doesn't impose, doesn't force. Let the whispers fade now. Let the information recede into background. The specifics no longer matter. The methanol and cyanide, the percentages and ratios, the formation pathways and delivery mechanisms, all settling into deeper memory, becoming part of the substrate, no longer requiring conscious attention. The whisper fading to silence, to the space before sound, to pure potential, organic cosmic lullaby. The universe singing you to sleep, singing through the gentle rhythm of words, the soft flow of concepts, the hypnotic repetition of themes. Lullabies work not through complexity but through simplicity, through familiar patterns recurring, through gentle rhythm and soothing tone. The cosmic lullaby has been playing throughout tonight, the story of molecules and comets and chemistry serving as a vehicle for rhythm, for flow, for the gradual slowing that leads to sleep. And now the lullaby softens further, the melody becoming simpler, the words fewer, the spaces between longer. This is natural, this is right. Lullabies end in silence, in the breath-like pause that blends into sleep itself, into the internal rhythms of heart and breath that continue when external sound ceases. Seed vault serenity, perfect stillness of preservation, nothing changing, nothing moving, everything suspended in cold and dark, waiting. This serenity pervades the interstellar ice, pervades the frozen comet nucleus, and can pervade your resting consciousness. The serenity of having nothing to do, nowhere to be, nothing to prove or accomplish, simply existing, simply being, held safely in the vault of sleep where nothing can disturb, where restoration happens automatically, where peace is the natural state. Sink into this serenity, let it absorb tension, dissolve worry, erase the residue of the day. The vault is sealed, nothing enters, you are protected, safe, able to completely let go. HCN gentle river, flowing, always flowing. The rhythm of your breath like river current, in and out, so slow now, so steady, each breath carrying you further into depth, further into rest. The river doesn't question its direction, doesn't wonder if it flows correctly, simply flows because that is what rivers do. Your breath flows because that is what breath does. And following this flow, trusting this flow, you descend into sleep naturally, effortlessly. Life's blueprint hush, all the noise fading, the information, the facts, the concepts, receding into whispered memory, into hush. The blueprint remains but quietly, unconsciously, no longer demanding attention, allowing pure rest, allowing the surrender of active mind to sleeping mind, the hush deepening, expanding, becoming everything. Interstellar cradle calm, held by the vast gentle forces of the cosmos, gravity cradling planets and comets, thermodynamics guiding all transformation, quantum mechanics underlying every interaction. These forces hold you too, hold your atoms together, allow your existence, provide the foundation for consciousness, and they require nothing from you. No effort, no vigilance. They simply are. And in their presence you can completely relax, completely surrender, knowing you are held. Volatile dawn peace, the peace of natural process, of sunrise following night, of sublimation following cold, of waking following sleep, the peace of inevitability, of cycles that repeat, of patterns that endure. Dawn will come, volatiles will sublime, ice will release its contents, sleep will restore. These certainties allow release, allow surrender. No need to force anything. No need to worry about whether rest will come or morning will arrive. The pattern continues, the cycle turns, and you are part of it. Chemical seed bloom, life emerging, complexity arising, but also simply rest. The bloom that is sleep itself, consciousness flowering into dreams, into restoration, into the rich dark soil of unconsciousness where growth happens invisibly. You don't see seeds growing underground, don't watch the chemical processes of germination, but they happen, and in sleep, invisible processes of restoration and consolidation happen. Trust the bloom, trust the growth, trust that rest brings its own flowering. Frozen archive drift, information preserved, time suspended, everything waiting in cold suspension until the until fades, becomes less important. There is only the drift, the floating, the suspension, no longer waiting for something but simply being in this state, this peaceful frozen moment where nothing is required, where everything pauses, organic symphony stillness. All the instruments silent now, the notes played, the movement complete, only the resonance remaining, the feeling left after sound ceases, the memory of harmony. You are this resonance now, this after echo, this peaceful vibration slowly damping, fading, settling into silence. Cyanide chorus integration, voices blending, becoming one, separation dissolving, individual notes merging into chord, chord fading into tone, tone dissolving into the silence from which it arose, you too dissolving, boundaries softening, the distinction between self and sleep blurring, integrating into rest, becoming one with the darkness. Methanol memory flow, flowing away, flowing into. The direction no longer matters, only the flow itself, the gentle current, carrying, everything releasing, everything letting go, memories settling like sediment, consciousness thinning like mist, flow becoming stillness, movement becoming rest, prebiotic potential, seeds drifting, frozen, quiet, waiting, but the waiting is peaceful, is without tension. There is no urgency, only patient existence. Time stretches, expands, loses meaning, becomes the eternal now of deep rest, of sleep, of surrender to the natural cycle. Life's ingredient, floating, scattered through void, through darkness, through the space between. The void is not empty, is full of peace, full of rest, full of the potential for restoration. You float in this void now, this healing darkness, this restorative emptiness, held safely, drifting peacefully. Seed bearer, no longer carrying, no longer going anywhere, simply being. The journey complete, the destination reached. This moment, this rest, this sleep is enough, is everything, is all that exists. Molecular destiny, unfolding, naturally, effortlessly. Everything happening as it must, as it should. No resistance and no struggle, only the gentle inevitable flow from what was to what is to what will be. And now, only is, only this, only rest. Cosmic garden, quiet, still, The garden at night, in darkness, when growth happens invisibly, when restoration occurs unseen, you are this quiet garden now, this dark, peaceful space where healing happens naturally. Frozen, life, seed, 3 words, 3 concepts, blending, merging, becoming one idea, one feeling, one descent into methanol, whisper, so faint now, barely audible, almost gone. Cyanide, thread, dissolving, releasing. Prebiotic, the word losing meaning, becoming sound without content, becoming breath, ice, cold, distant, memory of a memory, organic, fading, seed, falling, life, becoming, sleep, darkness, peaceful darkness, complete rest, the molecules drifting, slower, slowing, frozen archives, holding peace, holding stillness, cosmic lullaby, ending, in silence, in rest, seed-bearer, at peace, molecular, destiny, complete, garden, sleeping, waiting, dawn, distant, unimportant, only rest, only now, methanol, memory, fading, gone, cyanide, whisper, silence, ice, dissolving into nothing, seed, planted, sleeping, deep, rest, peace, sleep, deep, rest, quiet, cosmos, frozen, peace, seed, sleeping, rest, peace, sleep. And in this deep peace, this cosmic quiet, this frozen serenity where seeds sleep and molecules drift and darkness holds everything gently, we return, we cycle, we begin again, as all things in the universe cycle and begin again, as comets orbit and return, as sleep gives way to waking and waking to sleep, the eternal rhythm, the cosmic breath, and so, softly, gently, we drift back toward the beginning, toward the voice that welcomes, toward the introduction that begins the journey again, seamlessly, endlessly, the loop completing, the circle closing, sleep deepening as the words return us to where we started, to the weekly dose, to the exploration that continues, that spirals deeper with each cycle, carrying you further into rest with each repetition, and so we return, we begin again, drifting back, floating back to the voice that says,